Welcome back, friends and scoundrels, to Werewolf Unchained. I'm Bran,
And I'm Ryan.
and today we are talking about trick or treat, not
Treat.
not trick or treat, not trick or treat, trick or treat,
Trick
as
or
a
treat.
lot of people would pronounce it. Anyways, if you're on YouTube listening to this, give us a thumb one way or the other. It doesn't matter. Comment, do some sharing around, and pretty much likewise on the podcast side, rate, review, and so share it there. Try to get some
Al-
spread around.
Always appreciate the commentary too. Let us know what we're doing right and wrong.
Yes, can't get better if we don't have feedback, and I can handle it.
I can handle it.
Also, if it's about my voice, I can't do anything.
Well, that's true. I can
Um,
make funny sounds with my voice while we're doing this if they want, but I don't think that would help any.
yeah. Um. Anyways, so that out of the way, this was your pick, and I was a little excited for it for a
Yeah,
couple of reasons. One because I just like this movie.
yeah. This is surprisingly just kind of an all-around fun, good movie.
Yeah, it is. When I first saw it, like I enjoyed it, I liked it, but it is one that has had to grow on me a little bit over time with each rewatch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like again. Not that I didn't like it to begin with. It just I don't know. It's kind of weird,
Yeah.
and I was a little bit removed from horror.
Mm,
I think we
yeah.
rented this from Redbox originally, or did our roommates have it? I don't
Uh,
remember. That
Original
was
release date on this was 2007, so that was a while back.
oh yeah. We would have had to either rent it or our roommate at the time had it. 'Cause I think my biggest problem, honestly, is Anna Paquin. I'm not a big fan of hers.
I can understand that. Uh, I think the role that she plays in this fits her very well, but at the same time, I agree with that. It's kind of after seeing her in so many things, it. I mean, it, obviously don't know her in person in any way, shape, or form, but she's one of those actors that I don't think she's ever acting.
I,
I think she's just sort of herself through a
I,
slightly different lens for whatever the movie is.
my experience with her is pretty much only with Rogue,
Yeah,
maybe a couple hodgepodge roles here or there in this.
yeah,
Like I never. What show is she on? Supernatural? No. Vampire Diaries, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't like.
Never got into that one myself. It seemed too WB versus through an R-rated lens for me,
Yeah,
which is weird to say because
which
there's plenty of things from the WB that I actually like, but but yeah. Little FYI for the people listening: Trick or Treat is an anthology, something that we really don't get in cinema in any way, shape, or form, really, these days. I mean, you could kind of say that the American Horror Story series was an anthology in some ways because it
if you
changed.
look at the series as a whole, yes.
Yeah, but each season is its own arc, and then the show itself is anthological because it changes to a different cast partially and different story partially.
Yeah,
But
definitely changes story and timelines.
yeah,
Although
so that
some
would
of
be
them
the
are
that would be
crossing
the
over a little bit.
exactly, and a good anthology does that. This does that, and but yeah, that would be the biggest thing. Most
Yeah, because this is more in line anthology style to I think it's what Crash
yeah,
with Terrence Howard outside of genre,
yeah,
where there's separate stories going on, but they're all interconnected,
yeah,
as opposed to something like Creep Show, which is bookended by a common thing,
yeah,
and then each story is led into by a similar character or whatever.
yeah,
But each story is its own thing that stands apart from the others.
yeah. Another series, excuse me, that started intended to be an anthology that ended up not being was the Halloween movie series.
Yeah, they tried to take it there.
Yeah, the original
Thanks,
intent,
Friday the 13th.
right? But the original intent was it was supposed to be a different story. Well, but the problem became the studio said this was super popular. We want an immediate sequel with everyone involved, and so we
It was
got the
fan
second one.
backlash a little bit too,
Yeah, partially, but
because
the because the third one is just bad, and
I'll disagree with that a little bit.
eh, I
But I've got some like
we'll,
outside perspective on that
we'll get to that conversation
someday.
when we do that series. Got to stay away from the super big ones for a little while. But yeah, this is a great example of an anthology because it's got interconnected story. I mean, every pumpkin-headed Sackboy
Mr.
on
Sam,
the poster, Mr. Sam. I love the name. It's just
I love
it,
Sam.
it,
He's great.
yeah. Sam is and he pulls together even the like looser threads of this, and he is part of what makes this entire thing great. And
Well, not
and
just that, but like if you pay attention, you see all of these things
oh yeah,
kind of circling around each other. You see the
yep,
characters throughout all the stories,
yep.
or most of the characters, anyways.
And the 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 movie plays with time because the end is actually the beginning is actually the end, and not the portions of the story don't take place in any sort of particular chronological order, but they give you hints
Yeah,
at
it's got kind of a little bit of a Tarantino feel to it in that
yeah,
regard because he likes to do that.
yeah. But by the
Like
time you get to the actual end of the movie, you should be able to tell where everything happens in amongst itself.
for the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, my only, I've got one little bit on that with what is his name, Mr. Krieger?
The principal, yeah.
No, the bus
Oh no,
driver.
oh, the bus driver, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it just the timeline with that particular story just doesn't quite make sense
Mm,
when you
which
like
chunks?
it's his placement in the timeline. Like, I almost feel like he should be second to last
Oh, okay, I
in
see
the
what you mean.
timeline, just because it makes more sense for the kids to get out after the other kids go down to the quarry.
Yeah,
That way, it gives more of a purpose to it versus them showing up somewhat near the beginning or maybe more towards the middle. And because it's just weird because then it just makes me think, if they could have gotten out any time, why did they wait 40 years to do this? But like I said, with the other kids going down there first,
yeah,
it gives them knowledge that they can get out.
yeah. Or, and I always felt that this was the takeaway from why it had been so long for that specific event to transpire. But I mean, if this had been a rumor floating around for this entire time, there's no way that kids hadn't done this before in some fashion or another.
Literally,
So, but yeah, the
it's just within the framing of this isolated movie.
yeah,
I think it would have fit better that way,
I can see that. I can see that.
or even they're God, he's been Michael Dougherty's been working on a sequel for
Oh yeah,
years.
the the sequel was announced in 2013.
Yeah, but he's taken on some other projects.
Yeah.
But he's trying to put the cap on a couple of them so that way he can focus all his time and attention to this. Little
Here's
bit of news there
hoping.
for you, folks.
Yeah. Here's hoping he does that and doesn't end up being another. Crying out loud, my brain is just not going to work. Um, directed the Hellboy movies. Why am I not thinking of his name?
Yep. Toro?
Yeah, Del Toro. Del Toro's just sort of become that guy that is working on everything and releases practically nothing these days. Well, okay, so we have jumped in very much off the rails. Let's
All over the
so
place today.
uh, one of the big themes in this is tradition.
Yeah,
Sam is also sort of the arbiter of Halloween tradition.
yeah. He's definitely kind of the overseer, if you will,
Yeah,
or just making sure people, for the most part,
yeah.
are following these. And I was excited to talk about this. I've listened to a few other podcasts about it, and they would bring up the theme of tradition, but none of them ever actually talk about it
Hmm.
in any meaningful way. They're just like, yeah, tradition, it's there.
Yeah,
Sam wants you to follow him. Okay, moving on.
yeah. Thanks for the insight.
Um, but like my personal observances of it is how some traditions, as far as Halloween goes, and depending on which, how far back you want to go with those, there's very strict observance to them,
Hmm.
and then there's other ones where it's not as strict, just so long as something's still happening.
Yeah,
Like a couple of the ones that are a little bit more loose are like the dressing up. More traditionally, you dressed up as demons, going back a lot further, or fairies or whatever creatures were wandering around that night.
yeah,
To blend into with them, so that way they wouldn't attack you.
yeah,
But going into modern times, it's been allowed for that tradition to change a little bit, as long as there's some loose observance of it that you are still dressing up.
yeah. And
Um,
one of the characters even touches on one of the during the school bus massacre portion. What's her name? Rhonda brings up the old name of Sam Hain for Western Europe for the most
yeah,
part, and which is great. Not just showing some of the modern traditions, but also trying to. I mean,
well, and
I don't
it's
even. I don't want to say that she was trying to enlighten or teach anyone anything. Just paying reverence
she's
through
just a
lip
nerd and
service.
talking about it.
Exactly, and kind of filling my role in the
Yeah,
movie for something like that because I'd be the sort of it, taking taking jack o' lanterns to this site of the dead is very much something I would have done as a child, uh, and bringing up the old Sam Hain name would have been me. But yeah,
I don't,
it doesn't linger on it very long, and the kids that she's with even kind of give her the oh yeah she's just a nerd sort of thing, and
yeah. It's actually funny because every time I watch it, her part comes up. She reminds me so much of my daughter,
yeah,
because Sarah's the type to just randomly spout out trivia facts about whatever at you.
cool.
I touched on the treats a little bit too there, real quick.
Yeah,
As loose observance, because again, the treats were handed out as a means of appeasing certain um, figures
yeah,
that would cross the veil, and that's just been turned into just generally handing them out.
yeah,
Like you would set instead of actually handing them out, they would actually set them on their doorstep or something. She didn't want to interact no matter
r-
what,
exactly.
and it's turned into just giving them out in general.
Yeah, and I
It's
really
weird.
like the principal portion of the which is the second little chunk because
Yeah, the
uh,
first real actual story
yeah,
that's followed fully through.
and I love that he shows up again later in the surprise party portion of the movie,
Yeah,
um, because that's just great turnabout for him. But Sam Wilkins or Stephen Wilkins, excuse me, just thinking so much of Sam, um, uh, basically embodies what every parent fears to one degree or another their kids are going to run into in modern times for Halloween. I mean, he straight up tampers with candy, kills a kid, and then later goes freaking hunting. Out of all the little chunkets of the story through this, what was your favorite?
I have to go. No, maybe the werewolves,
The werewolves?
just because it's a nice twist on things,
Yeah,
and I completely forgot, but meant to look up what an actual proper nomenclature would be for it.
yeah. Uh,
But I
I
mean, the original nomenclature is perfectly fine because man just means man in general, or
yeah,
people in general, not specifically males.
yeah. But I find it kind of funny that your your favorite portion is also the part with the one actress that you don't like.
Just circumstance, man.
I
It's
know, it, but that is a great part because it's such a great turnaround on uh, horror movie trope. I mean, the uh, the
all of it.
well, the entire thing does that. Yeah, the entire movie does that. But this one takes it to an extreme, and this is where that principal gets his comeuppance. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
he
it's the predator in that instance becomes the prey
yep,
unknowingly.
yep.
Um, the
We,
subversion of some expectations.
yep, we get to see Wilkins hunt down, and I don't think that was directly in this specific portion of the story. I think it was a side thing in one of the other ones
Yeah,
leading up to this.
well, because this story's broken up throughout the whole
Yeah,
movie, kind of until the
until it
climax of it.
until it really dials in on it. Yeah, but yeah, the
Because I think this is actually is this actually the second one? 'Cause we open with robot girl getting killed,
yeah.
or does it go jump straight to Wilkins and then goes to
Uh,
the girls changing?
so um, I
We're
actually
introduced to these characters through the girls changing.
so we get our opener with the married couple and the wife whose name I am not remembering off the top of my head. That's fine. Really
Like
wanting to
robot
just
lady.
yeah, robot lady. Uh, she she wants to put out the jack o' lanterns and just take down all the decorations and stuff now, which I am just like, oh wow, that's I mean,
It's freaking midnight. I don't care
right?
if your mom's coming over. Go to bed.
Yeah, go to bed. Go watch the porn with your husband and have a little bit of fun and go to bed. Take care of that tomorrow. But yeah, that so we go through that, and if I remember right, we get a little bit of setup for the school bus massacre and the surprise party, and then we get uh, the the overweight kid at the principal's house, and then we get that full chunk of the story. So yeah,
Because I remember that starts at the parade and follow or at the street parade or whatever.
yeah,
He's walking around and it follows him into the neighborhood. Shows him knocking pumpkins down.
yeah,
He's
and we
just
see.
violating everything.
Oh yeah, he was just wreaking havoc. I mean, but yeah, we get a little bit of an intro to some of the other characters before we see him, and I think you're right. I think the the girls from the surprise party were part of that.
Think because I think they come out and talk to the camera crew, and then it latches
Oh,
on. The camera latches onto this kid and follows him.
yeah,
I don't know. God, it's
that that sounds right. It's
been over a week since I watched it.
yeah, right. Yeah, same. I was gonna rewatch it again, but I was like, I don't think I've forgotten enough to need to watch it again. And now I'm,
And until
it,
it's time to talk about it, and
yeah, it's not the biggest deal, but it's like if it was fresh in my head, I would remember exactly when those things occurred. But yeah,
and
the
it's
the surprise party is a great thing, and I love their take on the werewolf transformation. I like
Really
that.
interesting.
Yeah,
It's one of the better I don't know if it's necessarily a transition that makes sense, but it's fun
yeah, it's fun,
and it's
and
inventive.
yeah, and I mean, until you see that that's what's going on in the party, you're just thinking the whole time because she picked up this guy who had killed someone, two people previously in the movie, and was looking probably to get away with both of them very cleanly.
Yeah.
And yeah, surprises the absolute crap out of him. And he probably gets it as bad or maybe worse than the bus driver.
Well, because we don't actually. Well, we see what Sam does to him, but we don't get
Yeah,
to see what the kids do to him.
it's true. That's a tough one to know much about. Sam definitely took the bus driver for a nice little torture ride until he got his candy bar.
Yeah, which is weird. Any Speaking of which, while we're on this,
Mhm,
that's my weakest link in all these. I touched on the timeline thing, which that's not actually what does it for me,
mhm,
because there's the point where he falls down the stairs or whatever,
yeah,
or gets to, or well, his ankle's been cut, his Achilles tendon,
mhm,
and he falls at the bottom of the stairs for sure, and lands on all the razor blades and broken glass and whatever else is in there, mess of stuff. And like you see the initial of him having a tough time dealing with it because there's still uh, protrusions in his hand,
yeah,
if you will. And then, like immediately after that, he goes back to using his hand like normal.
yeah,
And that, like gripping a shotgun and everything else he tries to do, he would not be able to.
yeah. That's
I mean, I've got a minor poke from my cat's claw from the other day, like 3 days old now, and it's still bugging me.
yeah. That I mean, we can just chalk that up to the fact that it's a movie. I mean, unfortunately,
And
there's
it's not a deal breaker in any way for anything. It just
yeah,
it does bring that one down quite a bit
yeah,
because it's really a missed opportunity to be a lot more creative of like him trying to handle the shotgun and just able to.
yeah,
So it forces him into this other place of having to deal with this kid
yeah,
or creature.
yeah. Which has some great freaking moments in it. Which is you're absolutely right. The little bit of lack of reality and how he deals with his injuries is the weakest portion of that chunk of the story, which has some of the best visuals in the show.
And
Because yeah,
I started trying to keep track of like attention to detail moments, and then that happened. And I was like, well, there goes that.
yeah,
Because as you mentioned, the first victim that Wilkins takes as his pseudo vampire, um, it the reason why he's able to get away with it is because she stumbles out on the street covered in blood,
hmm,
and you're like, oh man, maybe somebody will help this girl. And then a robot lady and her husband walk by,
yeah,
and she grabs onto them and she's like, help me. And then
yeah,
the camera pans and you see a bunch of other people covered in blood,
just
and they're drunk, so they just think she's drunk.
yeah,
And then he lays her down by a bunch of people who are passed out drunk and covered in blood.
yep,
So it's little things like that that's like, why did you miss the mark on this one? And it
exactly.
almost makes me question if there's studio involvement in that. If they, hey, you need to do one more just to pad the runtime, or getting involved in general.
Yeah,
He mentions he's got a shotgun, have him use it. Check out
oh,
shotgun.
yeah. Chekhov's gun. I mean,
Literally in this case, doesn't
literally,
happen
and
very
yeah,
often.
it's And you may even be right. I mean, I don't remember what was the rating on this.
It had to have been R because there's language, there's gore, there's nudity.
Yeah.
Because it went straight to DVD. It might have been not rated.
No, here, the easiest freaking way to check. Um,
The race is on.
wouldn't be surprised if you beat me on this one. I didn't even have an open browser open on my computer at the moment.
I had to
Oversight
open
on
my
my
tablet,
part.
so
Uh,
it's R.
it is R. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Brian Cox. That's his name. I don't know why I couldn't remember it because I wanted to mention that he's always a winner,
Yeah. That that
which
that
is
you beat me by a little
something
bit,
I'm
but interesting thing to note: Brian Singer is the producer on this.
really.
Yeah,
That's
that
interesting because he that would explain Anna Paquin though.
that would explain. Yeah, he definitely had a thing for her for a while, didn't he?
That's
Uh,
impressive because I don't like his work.
but yeah, this is a departure for him, and that might explain some of the shortcomings and some of the moments
Yeah,
that
because
you're
that is a
referring
very
to.
Brian Singer thing, not understanding how things work.
Yeah, I mean,
Superman Returns,
yeah, Superman Returns.
all of X Men.
Yeah, not the. There are some things that he's done that I have enjoyed immensely, and there's some that it's just like, why? And yeah, just kind of surprising to see him on this.
Yeah,
Yeah, once you mentioned studio interference, I was thinking, okay, what's the rating? Because that's the current problem with
oh,
a lot of horror movies is the PG-13 craze. And this isn't a knock at all PG-13 horror movies because some PG-13 horror movies push the PG-13 as far as they can, or just make really good use of it. But there are just some horror movies that need an R.
there really are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Anyways, let's get the car back on the road, shall we?
We just keep taking those detours, conversational cul-de-sacs, as it were.
Right.
Uh,
Where do we want to go next?
asked you what your favorite was. It was the surprise party. Uh,
And covered my least favorite, so
exactly.
goes right to you. Same for you.
Yeah.
Me,
Um,
just cover all of it.
I actually the Halloween bus massacre portion is my favorite because uh, it focuses on little kids kind of being littler kids
Yeah,
and it following the principal section. You already know that this movie has the guts to kill a kid,
yeah. Not just
so
one, two.
it, yeah, and the but yeah the so going into the bus massacre, you know the movie's willing to go there, and it's just a
Yeah,
matter of what's going to happen. And I love the bus massacre for the characters. They feel like real kids, not knowing anything about the production of the movie offhand, but I wouldn't doubt that, with the exception of a kind of the general gist of what was supposed to be going on and some very specific lines, that they just let the kids talk.
could very well be.
Yeah, because it really didn't feel like, at
Ah,
least to me, it didn't feel like we were watching child actors of that age. It kind of just
yeah,
felt like we were watching kids on Halloween. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, yeah, and in this one we get to see Sam uh, sort of at the beginning because he kind of crosses the kids' paths when they were picking up the jack o' lanterns, and then we see him again at the end when Rhonda's escaping from the quarry, and they just sort of exchange glances with each other, and
very knowing kind of
yeah,
ex- exchange there. Also,
yeah, very knowing. More so on Sam's part, but you get the feeling that Rhonda's definitely more uh, in tune that Sam might not be just another kid than anyone
and
else
and
would,
I missed the opportunity earlier, but it's like she recognizes that he kind of embodies the spirit itself of Halloween,
right?
which might explain some of his powers.
Could be, could be. I'll say this during the uh, during his where we get to see him at the most. I was not expecting to see him like climbing on a ceiling and stuff. That was
Yeah,
that was a little bit more special effects than I thought we were going to get into in a movie like this. Uh, but it was
heck,
there. It was really good. But yeah,
I don't know
that
any of
was
the
my
budget stuff, but
yeah that, that that was my favorite part. The just little kids getting to be little kids and the movie not caring at all that they're little kids.
yeah. Well, I mean, they're not necessarily little though. They're uh,
Well,
probably about 13 or 14, maybe.
yeah, early teen. I mean, one of them is probably 9 or 10. But yeah, that's my. And the funny thing is that also leads me into my least favorite portion of the movie too,
Oh,
which
I
is
wanted to point out another moment of
sure,
great attention to detail
yeah,
because you have the howling of the wolves in the background
yep,
as that overlay of they're when the surprise party is happening.
yep. The the hint that something else is going on, and you need to uh, you don't know that
File.
you don't know that that's a hint that something else is going on until it happens. But that happens all over this movie. The 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 girls from the surprise party almost running over the it was the chunky kid, right? They almost hit him on the street,
Thought it was
or
what is
was
her
it
name?
Sam?
Rona.
Yeah, it was Rhonda. It was Rhonda. Sorry, yeah, it
Rhonda.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Jeez.
Rhonda. And so we see them, and we didn't see that it was them until the actual end when they kind of rehash the beginning from a slightly different angle. And the bus driver and the principal interact because they're neighbors. So during the stuff with the principal that's going on actually at his house, the bus driver interrupts several times to build tension and
Well, and it's a little bit comedic too.
yeah, it's a little bit comedic, and I love that that comes around on the flip side when the bus driver's kind of in his house at a window screaming for help. The principal's just like, yeah, fuck you too, buddy.
Ah,
Not that he,
screw you.
yeah, it just not even looking long enough to see that he's in desperate straits. It's like he's been just such a jerk to me that I don't even care, and it's just great. It's just great. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyways, before I interrupted you,
yeah, but yeah, the legend, which is a necessary part of why the kids go to this quarry and what happens to the bus driver later. That portion how much of that we actually end up having to see in flashback form. I'm not saying it's bad, but it takes away a little bit from the kids that we're engaging with in their journey because you're instead of just letting the girl tell the story, you're showing it to us,
yeah,
and it's kind it it's definitely something that I think we needed to see, but I would have preferred to see it in a more relevant chunk it to the the bus massacre kids themselves instead of the not saying that that they're not involved in that portion of the story because they absolutely are, but maybe doing the actual flashback and getting a little bit of that girl's voiceover over top of it
yeah,
as the reveal that the bus driver is who we're dealing with when Sam's going after him, instead of just showing us a picture, because it's significantly more relevant to his story than theirs.
yeah,
So I would have liked to have not been taken out of their story during their story. It is the only negative I have to that. And
Well, that brings me back to one of the other things that I didn't really like with Krieger's story
Hmm.
is he hasn't been observing any of the Halloween traditions time too,
Yeah,
like since he drove the bus into the quarry, pretty
yeah,
much. And so, like that bothered me a little bit too. Because I don't, hey, didn't he? Why didn't Sam do anything before now?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just there's just too many questions with this.
yeah. In a world where Sam exists, how does anyone get away uh, with uh, not observing them to at least some degree?
Yeah,
And
at least for that
yeah,
long, because we do see that people get their comeuppance for not.
exactly.
It's just
Um, what
unless
was it?
he's
20 years?
omnipresent.
It was a long time from when
It's
the
got to be like 30 or 40 years,
yeah
because he was 20 or 30 when he drove the bus off the cliff, and he's got to be
50s, 60s, yeah. And my little snippet on Wikipedia doesn't say specifically, but yeah,
yeah.
it's at least 30 years, has to be. But yeah, that's yeah. So he has not been in the Halloween spirit for a very long time, and so I mean,
Like I started saying there, unless Sam's omnipresent and see that this is going to happen in the future and just let it build.
yeah, maybe that's and this is total speculation because the movie doesn't give us any hint at this at all. But maybe the reason that we get the uh, massacred bus kids waking up and Sam being in town isn't coincidental. Maybe he's literally, by being in this town at this time, he is bringing as maybe the arbiter or the embodiment of the spirit of
Travels from town to
Halloween.
town.
Yeah, maybe uh, because of how far removed society at large in the first world is from these sorts of superstitions and traditions and stuff. Maybe yeah, he has to be there for the spooky side to come with it. Maybe he's diminished from his glory days in the old times, and he has to be here for these sorts of things to come about. And him actually going after Krieg was
And like a beacon for the kids.
maybe a beacon for the kids, maybe a warning to him. It's like, I'm not the only thing coming to say hi to you tonight. And
Maybe, but it does
yeah,
also
yeah, you
open
can,
the door figuratively and
oh yeah,
literally later on.
exactly. And kind of going the ghosts of Christmas past sort of way. It's like, okay, I am showing you that you can appease me, but that doesn't mean you can appease what you've done in the past.
Doesn't mean that you get a pass for your karma.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Ooh, that's a nice little theme there.
yeah, and it fits really well with some of the stuff involving uh old Halloween and Sam Hain and some of the other that this doesn't get into any of the themes of like the Day of the Dead or any of the it sticks very close to Western traditions, but it fits very well with that. It's uh, your ghosts are going to haunt you. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Oh God, I know that sometimes.
uh, but yeah, rewatching this Trick or Treat for this was one of those things where when I had the thought of adding this to our list, I was like, I like this movie. It's going to be fun to kind of get to watch it with the intention of dissecting it a little bit and talking about it. But watching it, I found so little that I could complain about. So little.
And that's not to say that we go into anything with
Oh, yeah.
of complaining about it. It's just watching something for enjoyment and watching something with a critical eye
Yeah.
are two completely different experiences. And again, like watching this with a critical eye for me too, it was difficult for me to find things.
Yeah.
Maybe because I was enjoying it so much.
Yeah. And I'll say this a million times that what you like is subjective. No one can tell you that you're wrong.
Yeah,
But what is good is objective. And I think this is so objectively just fun and good that it's kind of hard to
such an entertaining movie,
yeah,
and that even
and I
some
didn't
of the most some of the best critique movies, not just from the professional critics, but from fan critics as well, and from
yeah.
the fans in general. Like The Dark Knight, there's plenty of problems with that movie,
Oh yeah.
but it's still objectively a good movie and equally as entertaining.
Exactly. And I did not have this thought when I put it on the list after A Quiet Place, but this is almost the polar opposite of that movie, where if you're just if you're just popcorn movie mode, The Quiet Place is great. But the
Well,
moment you start getting
anyways,
critical, it falls apart.
yeah, yeah, Quiet Place is definitely
Yeah,
very much a blockbuster movie.
yeah. And this, critical or not, it stands up. It's a good, fun
But
horror movie all the way
none of the
around.
production companies had any confidence in this movie at all, and it went straight to video, and it's got a great, strong cult following.
Yeah,
Like this is going to go down as one of those sleeper classics that like, shoot, we're what 13 years removed from it, and
yeah,
people love this movie. People
yeah,
talk about it all the time.
yeah.
Anyways, do we want to talk about the Principal Wilkins segment
uh,
ending
uh,
a little bit more in depth?
sure, sure. Um, so the Principal Wilkins, we already talked about how that starts with him
Yeah,
him basically catching this uh, overweight kid, giving him, was it a razor blade piece of candy or was it poison? I don't
was
remember.
poisoned,
Yeah, because he just starts spewing bloody mess all over the place. It's
chocolatey, bloody mess.
yeah, it is bad. I
Gotta
mean, if I was more
be
sensitive to biological
traumatized.
stuff than I am, I might have had a problem with that because that went on for a while.
Yeah, it did.
um, but yeah, and it turns into a kind of a slapstick routine for a little bit during that because he just keeps getting interrupted by everything that can.
He's trying to hide the body,
Yeah.
and we find out that there's a second body in the grave that he's already dug,
Mhm.
which is another kid. There's been some debate on some people, or maybe just some misunderstanding that maybe it's his wife, because he does make the comment about
Oh,
his kid um, whining that he wishes mommy was still alive, and it's possible he may have killed her in the past. I wouldn't put it past him,
well, given what we
but
see of this guy, yeah,
the
that's actually not
implication,
even a way that I had thought, but that makes a certain amount of sense, certain amount of
but the
perfect sense.
implication in his mocking of his child, I wish mommy was still alive, is that she died some time ago.
Yeah,
Whether it be a year, a few months, a couple years, it's unknown. It's irrelevant. It just I wanted to clear that up for some
yeah,
because you do see that hand come up and grab his ankle,
yeah.
and it looks like a clown costume, and I didn't recognize any other kids having that costume, even the clowns that visit. Is it Krieger later on in the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they visit his house and he get the hell out of here. Oh, he has a dog chase movie, but yeah, their costumes don't match a little bit that we see. I was trying to figure that out hardcore,
Yeah.
but I just the few times that I tried to remember to pay attention. I just didn't see any kids wandering around, so
Yeah,
could have been probably somebody picked up way earlier in the day.
could be. Yeah, and but yeah, both angles on that, whether it's another kid or the wife. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I suppose
Yeah,
it could have been because he's not.
yeah,
I don't know.
but yeah,
That's too much thought to put into that.
yeah. So he kills this kid, carries him to the back of the house, and is interrupted twice by his own son yelling at him from the second story window, and
Yeah.
once by his neighbor Krieg, and it's just this.
Eh.
It's creepy slapstick levity, which is just kind of awesome, really. Oh, and uh, then him and his son head downstairs to carve a pumpkin, and the movie tries really hard to convince you that he's about to kill his kid.
But I'd say it does a pretty decent job. 'Cause it
Eh,
never. It's certainly a lot more tense, I think, than what Halloween, the newest one, tried to do.
eh, And, and I can absolutely see that, but for some reason I wasn't convinced.
Yeah, I think there's a moment where he actually does consider stabbing his own kid for a
Oh
second,
yeah, yeah, but for
and
especially all the hollering he was doing. It's like, yes, please draw more attention to me while I'm burying the dead that I just murdered. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, I would totally agree that he definitely considers it, but
I think
again,
that's
for
personally for me what gives it the weight is
yeah,
that he does consider it.
yeah, that it, like I said, I agree with the that he considers it, but for some reason that he would actually do it never entered my mind. I don't know why. There's just
It's, it's too
something.
tropey.
Uh, true, true.
So you almost, especially if you're like going back for a rewatch or anything. I don't know about your first time watching it. It might not have been as big of a trope, but like we were watching it, and there's the moment near the end of the first one, and that spoiler alert, by the way, if you haven't watched that, where Bill shoots Georgie in the head,
Mhm.
and there's no real indication that it might be Pennywise, and it lets it linger just long enough. But by the time that movie had come out, it's obviously Pennywise.
Yeah,
Like by that point, it was definitely too much of a trope for it to not be. There's been too many twists and shifting of narratives for you to buy into it.
yeah. But yeah, they go down to the basement and they start carving the eyes out of the head of a kid. uh, and then for just a moment, you have to ask yourself, who's the creepier kid here, Sam or this guy? Charlie. Charlie's the kid's name.
Um, what I was gonna say about this segment, so that way we're not just you know hashing through it.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it doesn't really stand out as like good or bad, but it does serve an important role setting up the
Oh yeah.
atmosphere
Hmm.
a little bit of the movie and letting you know that we're not gonna pull any punches.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Absolutely.
go full throttle, and you better grab onto your butt cheeks, buddy.
Yeah. Uh, like I was saying earlier, e- even most R-rated horror, unless it's like focusing around children to some degree or another, will steer away from actually killing a kid.
Even then, they don't.
Yeah.
Going back to it, like
Oh yeah. Well,
they kind of kill plenty of kids, but most of them are off screen.
yeah. And uh, it's a particular example of that because it kind of wants the whole point is that most of its victims are probably children.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, and this is something that's again you mentioned it. It's changed the 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 shock value of it being kids and off screen for the most part has become something that we've actually kind of gotten used to. But when this came out, that wasn't a
Yeah.
thing.
Considering the timing,
Yeah,
um, yeah, this was a big deal, I'm sure.
yeah, and
Um, you can't do kids on that level even today, like actual kids.
yeah,
Teenagers is one thing, but
yeah, that
I,
would
I, I still don't think that would fly.
yeah, that would be a hard sell because uh, as difficult as it is to get an actual R-rated horror movie to begin with, doing that with children, like not even borderline young adults in the preteen category, but like full blown five,
Children.
six, seven, eight. Yeah, that would be a most studios just wouldn't do that. I mean, even now, but
Like even on something that they're not going to put in theaters.
yeah, um, off screen if it's PG-13 and all of it happens off screen, that kind of gets a different vibe. But still, they end up focusing closer to the age range of the people they're expecting to watch the movie in that case, and that ends up being uh, 13 and up. And but yeah, this doesn't just kill a couple of kids; it straight up shows most of it. Uh, but
Charlie's really the only one because the other kids happen off screen
yeah, th-
down in the quarry.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
'Cause, like we see them get pulled off into the shadows in the fog, and then it cuts to Rhonda
Yeah,
getting away and
we get to hear some fairly
a bunch of screaming,
yeah screaming and some fairly
punchy
moist
noises.
sounds coming from that direction, but it's hard to say what's happening. But yeah, and like you said, uh, uh, of all of the deaths that you get to see in this, with the exception of the one kid's head on the table in the basement, it's fairly mild what happens to him,
Yeah.
realistically.
Oh,
But
yeah,
and,
because he
and
was
it,
already dead when he had his head cut off.
yeah, and setting up themes again. That this is willing to go that far, and that um, without this, we also wouldn't have the overarching theme that this is sort of. I mean, because we have at this point, this is the second story in the movie, and we have no idea that it's going to come back around and this guy's going to get his comeuppance.
Yeah,
And
not at all.
so by the end of this story section, it's like, holy crap, this guy's going to get away with this. and
Yeah, and
and
like, even when they introduce him later as a vampire, like it's not out of the realm that he might be a real vampire.
yeah, because when we see him in that role, he's in disguise, and it's definitely playing it up like he's an actual vampire. It's not until he's unmasked at the party that we're like, oh, okay. Um, but yeah, it also comes back to uh, what happens to him, what happens to the crappy kids, and what the zombie children from the bus massacre do to Krieg later, and uh, what the girls do at the surprise party. It's all about flipping of expectations and the typical predators getting their, for lack of a better term, they're just desserts from a higher power.
Yeah,
Something they couldn't even fathom actually being a thing, and that goes hand in hand with what happens in the principal. This respected authority figure of a school principal murdering children. I mean, okay, he does it with poison for the one that we get to see, but if he wanted to do it violently, like what happens to him in the surprise party, it's not like the kid could do anything about it. It's very emblematic of what happens in the rest of the film.
Something that I just kind of thought about just now, while you were talking was,
Mm,
you mentioned him being an authority figure, and if you look at a lot of the situations, the people who are causing the harm, for the most part, are people who are known to
mhm.
these to the victim,
Yeah.
um, which is fairly true in real life. A lot of times, the people who, in general, hurt you the most, or even like more grievous harm, certain types of assault or worse, depending on your view on that, are honestly most of the time people closer to you or somebody
Mhm.
that you know. It's not always, we have this idea that it's strangers, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
And like, Krieger gets attacked by Sam, which
Yep.
could be considered a stranger, and then um the back and forth situation with Wilkins and, I forget her name, but leading into surprise party.
Yeah.
Um,
Laura. But
sure.
yeah.
That's really kind of the only ones. And then, to play on the authority, how many instances have we seen in history where authority figures who were supposed to be mentors and guides and great people are actually monsters?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But um, for the surprise party, the takeaway I had on that wasn't that anyone was an authority figure there, but that in most situations it'd be the women that would be the hunted, and this group of college age women is actually there not just because it does not seem, because you don't get any hints that they're werewolves until much too late.
Until they're werewolves.
Yeah, but that that they're going after the kind of people that would typically be hunting them for their own purposes, one way or the other, on that sort of night. And but yeah, you're absolutely right. And this plays on that a couple of times fairly well. That yeah, it's the people closest to you that can hurt you the most.
Just
Very, very
yeah, found another thing to talk about.
true. Yep.
So, do you have anything else off the top of your head, or
No,
notes or
no,
otherwise?
no. That was my last little chunk of what connects all of these stories. I mean, it's as far as anthologies go, it right at first, it seems like the only real connecting tissue is going to be Sam and probably the fact that it's all happening in one town and the fact that Sam's going to be there. But there's a lot more going on for what's intertwining everything that's happening.
It's just as much fun for this movie to watch the background and see the connections,
Oh yeah, yeah. The second
the red
viewing,
strings, if you will.
yeah, second viewing is definitely the best viewing on this. Not saying that your first one isn't fun, but just all the aha moments on a second one.
Because you already know it's happening, so your brain is
Yep.
starts looking for the additional things.
Yeah.
And like, I've watched this movie like 5 or 6 times, and I'm still finding things.
Yep.
I actually think I just watched it not that long ago, just because.
Sign of a great movie.
I want to touch back on the tradition thing a little bit because I didn't quite finish my full thoughts on it yet.
Sure.
But we did allude to it earlier with, Charlie too, how he's breaking like all the cardinal sins of Halloween. 'Cause he's not
Yeah.
dressed up. He's smashing pumpkins, not observing the rules of the treats.
Yeah.
What else? That's all we really kind of get to see. But those are like kind of your biggest three as far as Halloween goes.
Yeah. There's just a general lack of respect too, which I think is what probably would have gotten Sam's attention if he hadn't gotten caught by the principal. But
Yeah. But back into the general idea of traditions to kind of loosely bookend this. It's interesting to me that the movie does play so heavily on this loose and strict observance of certain things that the certain traditions might still exist, but they're going to evolve and change as situations change,
Yeah.
whether it's socially or personal or whatever. Because like even within some of these, you've got personal traditions. Like the girls, they travel around and seem to do this every year on Halloween. Wilkins and his tradition of carving a pumpkin with his son,
Yep.
and maybe something that was passed down to him. Who knows?
Hmm.
Who else is there? Rhonda. She always goes all out for Halloween
Yeah.
and always has a billion pumpkins carved.
Yeah. Didn't she even say that she made her own costume?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Which is a downer for her friends who are all effectively wearing uh very nice bought costumes, but for her, it's something important about what she's doing as part of
It shows her
the,
love and respect for the day rather than
exactly.
just it's something that she does just because like she is
Mhm.
fully invested in it.
Yep.
She's the type of person who would become a cosplayer later in
Yeah.
life.
She, she, it's more than just a day on the calendar that she gets to do something special for her. It's inherent.
But I think Michael Dougherty, kind of in a way, it has this thing for traditions, maybe
Yeah.
because Krampus plays with a lot of very similar themes, just in regards to Christmas
Yeah.
as opposed to Halloween. It's in a lot of ways it's almost exactly spot on.
Gonna have to
But it's
watch that.
just overall, there's a lot of room and politically and socially, what are things that are still beneficial to us that maybe we don't need to let go of, and what are things that maybe we can modify and change a little bit.
Yeah.
What are some things that we can just straight out do away with? And I'm not going to be the person to sit here and preach to you what those are.
That's a
Some of
different
those things,
podcast.
yeah. Um, we'll probably talk about some of those things in the future going forward with some of this, but
Yeah,
um,
we run into some movies that deal with that sort of stuff more directly. Because
yeah,
with almost no changes, this movie could have been made in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Now it
hmm,
it it would have fit
yeah,
perfectly into just about any generation. So
yeah, because it doesn't. Aside from tradition and
yeah.
the harm from the trusted, which I think may be the two biggest themes, but
Mhm.
not saying anything else overtly or subtextually or otherwise.
Nope.
But yeah, now to bring that down crashing to the earth. Let's see here. We were doing your other pick for the next episode of
my
this.
my next pick was Underwater,
All right.
which is actually a super recent movie.
All right. Well, I suppose that about wraps it up. Everybody out there, thank you for listening,
Thank
present
you.
or future. Keep coming back. Till next time, toodles.
Bye bye.